It's the fall time of year, and so a lot of times in the South, when it turns fall, fishing turns great, but what happens is the fish really locate and they key in on shad a lot more. So they're keying in on bait fishing, not say crawfish or brim, which relate to the bottom a lot more. So we're fishing a deep dock right now. It's in a transitional spot in the middle of a creek towards the back of the pocket where the fish are gonna start chasing the shad to the back. And we're fishing a dock at say 25 foot of water. You could catch one on a shaky head or a jig or a Ned rig, but what a lot of times is those fish are saying only sitting probably 10 foot and higher. They're only sitting 10 foot deep. They're not on the bottom necessarily. So if you threw a Ned rig in there, it would only be in the strike zone for say a half a second to a second. It may be a reaction strike and he may key on it, but that's when I really utilize say a deep jerk bait or a swim bait where I can keep it in that strike zone in that 10 foot and shallower range for a lot longer. Your percentage of getting a bite triples when say you're throwing it out there and say you're making a 20-yard cast. If it's in the strike zone for say 15 yards compared to when that Ned rig or that jig was only in the strike zone for 1 foot. So when you increase your percentages like that, you have a lot better chance of having a successful day. You know, sometimes when you're throwing the shallower diving jerk baits, a lot of times the bill doesn't really deflect it as much, but even if I'm throwing it in say 3 feet of water, that bill it bounces back and helps deflect it, and it makes it a lot more weedless whether you're throwing it in say 2 feet or 25. You know, sometimes you always got to be paying attention to your bait, paying attention to your graphs. I saw right then the fish chased it back, and so what I did was they were right under the trolling motor. So I just went to the back of the boat, and that way my bait would stay in the strike zone when it reached the trolling motor. And where if I was standing up there where I normally stand, you know, you got to use your whole boat. The whole boat's a tool. You got the back deck, you got to stay focused and keep an eye on them and let the fish do the talking. You know, when I'm fishing deep docks like this, really looking for these suspended fish, you want to make long casts and get it as much surface distance down that dock as you possibly can. Where you see I'm right over front of that dock. You're staying in the strike zone longer is what you're doing. It's just like say if you're fishing riprap, you want to parallel it. It's the same way with the dock. You know, if I was just to go down one piling or something, I'm really not covering that much water. But when I cast down the front of it, that jerkbait's going to be in front of that dock for 25 feet, so it just gives you that much more of a distance to catch fish. Jerkbait is probably my favorite thing to throw, but a lot of times I love to switch it up, give them a different look, and throw a swim bait. I can cover a lot more water with it, and you can fish it a lot faster, and it just gives them a different approach. Say if I've already went down to say a stretch of docks, and I threw that jerkbait in there and say I caught a couple fish, I can go back with that swim bait and say catch more fish or possibly a bigger fish. It just gives them that a little bit different look, a little bit different profile, and it's something that really I key on and I lean on hard in the fall just to really imitate shad and catch those suspended fish. I keep it simple. I'm throwing a 7.3 medium heavy action rod. This is actually the Daiwa Tattoo Elite Series rod, but you want something where you can really get a lot of range on it sometimes, but it's also a little bit shorter of a rod so you can make more accurate casts. And what I'm doing is I always throw it on bait casting gear. I'm throwing it on a 7-to-1 gear ratio, 14-pound fluorocarbon line. That way it's a very versatile technique. I can throw it in 20 feet of water, or I can say I'm throwing it right now in 5 foot of water at the end of a dock. But throwing it with a medium size rod, I'm able to put that bait in areas that, say if I was throwing a 7.6 or an 8-foot rod that I'd want for offshore to get a good hook set in it, I'm able to be accurate and still be able to handle those fish.